Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session of Tough Talks. Today, we're going to be talking about identifying a possible toxic relationship. And today, we have myself, Regan, Jules-Macquet, and Magda, Reynolds, a psychological counsellor from NICRO, talking about what you can look for if you're trying to identify whether you are in a possible toxic relationship. Magda, to start us off, could you please unpack for us what is a toxic relationship and what kind of impact that can have on people?
So I know that, today toxic relationship is one of the buzzwords. Just always keep in mind that toxic relationship doesn't necessarily need to be a romantic relationship. It can be a romantic relationship, it can be a friendship, or it can even be a family member. Just any relationship that there are real constraints in terms of, either a person who puts you down the whole time or a person who truly brings out just the worst sides of you. Something that really affects how you are functioning and how you are perceived by others. The flag would usually be when people say, you've changed or you're different when you're around this person, but they don't mean that in a good way.
Okay. Alrighty, so let's have a look at the signs of a potentially toxic relationship. And it's important to remember that one or two or three of these signs does not necessarily indicate a toxic relationship. However, these identifiers are useful to know because if you see a cluster of them, it gives you an indication you need to step back and reevaluate this relationship and whether it's healthy for you. Alrighty, so the first thing is a lack of respect. And here, do you feel consistently disrespected, belittled, or demeaned by this person? Magda, could you give us a bit of an example of what kinds of, let's say, more subtle ways that a person can be disrespected? Because I think with these kinds of relationships, it's not necessarily obvious, clear-cut disrespect. It's like subtle little niggly comments that are made here and there.
It could be very, very little and very subtle things, such as a person saying to you that you're in a relationship with any type of relationship, oh, you did that really well for somebody who is like. So it's a compliment, but it's also an insult because they're saying that they wouldn't have expected a person like you to do something that well, or a person who's in your profession to do it that well. Or just in terms of professional growth and development or education, if let's say you are somebody who is training to be a chef and they make a good meal and you compliment them on it to say something like, yes, and I didn't even study for it. And then, have a laugh and they say, oh, it's just a joke, don't be so sensitive. Those types of things are the ones to look out for, often disguised as humor, where the person would say, no, you just don't have any sense of humor, or often disguised as sarcasm to say, you just don't understand these type of comments, and it's not meant to hurt you, and oh, don't be so sensitive. That is the type of thing to then have a look out for in terms of the lack of respect.
Okay, thanks. And often, as we said, it can be very subtle and disguised as, honest feedback or just being blunt or being humorous. But if this is a pattern and it's having a negative impact on you, then you can start to question what is this person's intentions with speaking like that.
And also just keeping in mind that there's a big difference between a person being blunt and a person being rude. There is very much people who would absolutely be very rude and then say, I'm just a blunt person. No, you're not. There is a very big difference in terms of delivery and intention with the two things. Somebody who's blunt will say something from a good intention, and it would not be something that they would necessarily aim to hurt you, but rudeness is always aimed to hurt you.
So I think intention is important to correctly identify. Okay, the next one is a big one, control and manipulation. Does the person try to control your actions, decisions, or try to isolate you from friends and family? This is a huge one, and it normally takes place in little incremental stages that you as a person don't necessarily realize. So they'll say, oh, do you have to hang out with your friends? Do you have to spend so much time with your sister? You never spend any time with me. And gradually, bit by bit, they are working to isolate you from your meaningful contacts. And they basically are making you choose between your friends and family and them. They may say it overtly, they may do it in subtle little ways, like always planning an event that clashes with something that you want to do with your family. But the goal here is to isolate you from people who support you and to control who you're spending time with and where you go. I think a lot of people in partnerships, their partners often try to get them to stop their hobbies and their interests. Oh, you go to the gym so much, I hardly ever see you anymore. Or, on weekends, you always want to go play golf. Our hobbies and our activities are an important part of our emotional and mental well-being. So sometimes it can be valid, like you never actually are at home. But when it's a pattern of trying to get you to stop doing the things that don't involve them or where they're not the focus of attention, the intention there is to control you, to isolate you, and not because they actually genuinely want to spend more time with you. Magda, do you have anything to unpack there?
This one, there's a very fine line here, and it's very complicated because, you see it is often something that men would actually say, that my girlfriend, my wife, my fiance, whoever, doesn't want me to spend time with my friends. Now, there's two things here. Either it may be control or manipulation, or have you looked at your friend group? Are these positive friends? So there's also a bit of a thing that you need to keep in mind. I mean, if you are in a friend group who you come home very late or you come home drunk and people can't get hold of you, regardless whether you're male or female, or whatever your preference is, that is a flag. Somebody won't want you spending time around those people because they're worried for your safety. But now, if you are in a situation where you hear, oh, I miss you so much, don't you want to rather spend time with me? Oh, I know you have this thing on with your family this weekend, but I booked this, spontaneous holiday for us. And on it goes. Or, yes, I know you want to see them and it would be so nice to see them, but I also want to go along with you because I would also like to see them. So why don't you postpone until I can go with you? So slowly, in very slow stages that you might not even notice it, is they start to break down the communication and the relationship that was there, to the point when you realize what's happening, the relationship has gone to dust and you are isolated.
Yeah. And thank you. And the next one would be constant criticism. So here that you're frequently being put down, criticized, and the goal here is to undermine your sense of self-worth and to break down your confidence. And again, there might be a little grain of validity in the criticism, but again, it's an intention. Is it helpful criticism? Is it constructive? Is it trying to build you to be a better person, the better version of yourself? Or is it just finding fault with whatever you do? And there's nothing that you can do correctly. That will definitely form part of what is potentially a toxic relationship, because you'll start to question yourself, question your own capabilities, and that is part of just undermining your sense of autonomy and confidence. Magda, anything from you there?
Just a very simple example, like if the person tells you every time, oh, let me drive. I'm the better driver. Slowly over time, the message seeps in that I am not a good driver. And it might not flag for you, but at some point you're going to be like, oh, but I'm not a very good driver. And that would come as a surprise. And you think, where did this come from? And when in actual fact, it was something posing as help that was being filtered through over enough time to make you internalize that belief. So it's a very basic example, but it would be something like that.
Okay. The next one is emotional abuse. And this, again, can also be very subtle. It's much easier to identify the overt examples, but there are also very subtle ways like gaslighting, guilt tripping, and then constant blame. So if this is a dynamic of that relationship, be it with family, friends, or with a romantic partner, that is definitely an indicator that this is not a healthy relationship for you. Magda, do you want to give us some examples of gaslighting, guilt tripping, or constant blame?
I know people who have disclosed mental health struggles in their relationships often struggle with this, where somebody would say to them, this was not the situation. Maybe you should go speak to your psychologist about it. Or, this is why you need to take medication. It's not the situation at all. You're completely misinterpreting it. Go drink your medication. It's not solely that group, but it is often something that is used, that is weaponized effectively against you in a relationship. And then, it can also look like things such as, you always do this. You always leave me here, or you always choose your friends over me. Just that all or nothing type thing that you have to take on the guilt for being the one who always does whatever, or you never do XYZ. And then, oh, yes, we can't come to this event because she's too tired, or we can't come to this event because he now has to spend time with whoever. So, just taking the blame for things that may be out of your control, like work events or other things that you would have to prioritize above, hanging out with friends, or guilt tripping in, you never fill the car up with petrol. How am I supposed to do anything? When in fact, that's supposed to be a shared responsibility if it's a shared car, those type of things.
So I think here that the helpful thing would be to look at the intention of the person. Are they looking to constructively solve a problem? They're raising their concerns about something that you might be doing, and then it's solution-based discussion, or is it blame-based discussion? Because blame-based is not constructive. It's not moving towards a better solution, a better relationship, a better situation. It's just looking to find fault. So that might be helpful for people who are unsure, am I getting genuine feedback here? Is this person generally frustrated with me, or is this just gaslighting and guilt tripping and blaming? It's what is the intention of the person? Are they looking to raise awareness and talk about a solution, a better way forward, or is it just them venting at you? And the venting part is just the toxic part, because what must you do with this? Even if you did do something wrong, how can you move forward from this? Where does the solution lie? Is it in a friendship, in a family relationship, in a romantic partnership? Where do you go from this? You can't go anywhere. You're just a punching bag. So that might be an indication that the feedback you're getting is more emotional abuse rather than this is an honest discussion between adults about something that you might have done. How can we together work on making this better?
And also then just keeping an eye, because, abuse is never the fault of the victim. However, in this specific dynamic where we're speaking about toxicity in a relationship, usually toxicity breeds toxicity. So the chances are that both of you are then experiencing the other person as toxic. It's very rarely that it's just one person having the experience of the toxicness. And then that is something that you need to look at as a pair. Is this something that we both need to work on? Are we better separate? The type of steps that you can then follow, see somebody external, hear from even your friend group how they see the relationship. Is it worth it to then go to couples counseling? And obviously this is now when it's just a toxic relationship. I'm now not speaking about a domestic violence type of situation where there's very clear-cut things that it is absolutely not the fault of the victim.
Okay, we just got time to look at, I think, one more, and then we'll wrap up with a general discussion, and we'll pick up the rest of this in another session. So the next one is unbalanced power dynamics. Do you feel that the person has all the power in the relationship, or most of the power, or a disproportionate amount of power, and they're making the decisions and dismissing your needs and opinions? You can see this in family dynamics, in friendship dynamics, and in romantic partnerships. So ideally, in a healthy relationship, things should be more or less balanced, and that might change over time or change from situation to situation. But it's not healthy for one person to have most or all of the power and the other person just to be the person that is told what's going to happen, and they're just informed, but they're not actively part of communication or decision making. Magda, do you want to unpack that a bit further?
That one actually links to the lack of trust also, is that we may not trust the other person to do the things that need doing, so we take all the control in the relationship. Now, why is that lack of trust there? What has been happening that is there? It didn't just happen. Was it something in your past? Was it something in the relationship? And then also having a look at, why is the other person maybe comfortable with stepping back and letting one party take all the control? Is the party taking all the control happy with all the control? Or do they feel it is a burden, or that they're getting tired of it? Or is it something that they enjoy because they like controlling their partner? So there's a few dynamics there to unpack.
Okay. So that's all that we've got time for with this session. We'll pick this up and take it further in the next session. But at least in this session so far, we've uncovered or we've explored some of the indicators that you could look at to discuss, to explore whether your relationship might be possibly toxic. And having a better understanding of that will help you navigate that situation. Is it something that you can work on with the other person, or do you actually need to make a decision to separate from this person for your own emotional well-being? So I think what we can take away from this is that, as Magda said, there's a lot of complexity to this, to these issues, and it's not necessarily a clear-cut toxic person versus victim. We can bring our own behaviors, our own issues into that relationship, and the other person could also potentially be experiencing some form of toxicity from us. So the best way to deal with this is to have an open, mature, honest discussion with the other person about what your issues are, and it's solution-orientated discussion rather than blame or just trying to paint a narrative where the other person is in the wrong and you're in the right. If you feel like that isn't actually an option, then that's a pretty real indicator that this is not a healthy relationship. If you couldn't have these kinds of discussions with the other person, that indicates that it's not healthy in some shape or form. Okay, so that's all we've got time for today. So we began a discussion about toxic relationships and what to look for, and we'll pick up this discussion again and wrap up the other slides in the following session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.